Welcome back to another edition of A Chip Off the Old Pixel. To start things off, we're going to take a look at an all-time great in The Legend of Zelda for the NES. Of course, many of you guys are familiar with the storyline and gameplay of this title, but for the sake of formality, I'll have to tell you about it anyway. The Legend of Zelda is an overhead action adventure game released in 1986 and is set in the Kingdom of Hyrule. The symbols of Hyrule are the Triforce of Wisdom and the Triforce of Power, which are said to contain mystical powers. One day, Hyrule was attacked by an army of beasts led by the Dark Prince Ganon, who seeks to steal the Triforces. He succeeded in stealing the Triforce of Power, and as a precaution, Princess Zelda split the Triforce of Wisdom into 8 pieces, hiding each fragment in dungeons scattered throughout Hyrule. Zelda seeks out someone who can put an end to Ganon's rule and is then kidnapped by the Dark Prince. Of course, that person is Link, and it's up to him to find each of the 8 pieces of the Triforce of Wisdom and defeat Ganon to rescue Zelda and recover the Triforce of Power. The defining characteristic of The Legend of Zelda is exploration. The overworld of Hyrule is big with a mix of locations including forests, mountains, and oceans, and the underworld dungeons have some complex layouts and traps to deal with. What makes The Legend of Zelda challenging is finding your way around Hyrule and knowing where to find everything, since not all locations were out in the open and clues provided by villagers are sometimes cryptic. I think we all got stuck in the Lost Woods the first time around. That also makes this game enjoyable because you have to figure out a lot of things on your own. There wasn't much in terms of hand-holding compared to what we have in video games today, though you did get maps and compasses which laid out the rooms and the location of the Triforce fragments in each dungeon. Even with the map and compass, getting to the dungeon boss wasn't always straightforward, and some critical items were found in rooms that were not on the map. I had to rely on my instincts to memorize the directions of locations that I've been to, and to keep track of where certain items were located. I was too macho to draw maps. I remember bombing every wall, pushing every block, and burning every bush in sight to find staircases or passageways which hopefully led me to items that I needed or to a path closer to the dungeon boss. Another prominent feature in The Legend of Zelda is the inventory system. You have to make use of many items like bombs, arrows, and candles that you acquire by purchasing them or finding them in dungeons or other locations. Some locations on the map are inaccessible if you don't have items like the ladder or raft. There are also upgrades to your sword, shield, and armor. While playing this game growing up, there were times where I wasn't sure what items to use in certain situations. I would try using everything and hoping something would work. The Legend of Zelda has a diverse cast of enemies to deal with, including overworld enemies like Octoroks, which are octopus-like creatures that spit rocks, Moblins are dog-like goblins that shoot arrows, and Zolas, which are fish creatures that emerge from the water to shoot balls at Link. The underworld dungeons have its own enemies, including Dark Nuts, which are heavily armored knights that can only be attacked from behind or from the side, and Wizzrobes, which teleport around the screen and shoot powerful waves of magic at Link. Going back to what I was saying about using items in certain situations, some enemies can only be defeated with specific weapons or items, including the final boss Ganon. What gives The Legend of Zelda replay value is that with the amount of exploring you have to do, you're not going to find everything the first time around, and you don't have to complete the dungeons in order, though some dungeons and parts of some dungeons are not accessible unless you have specific items. Of course, you have the second quest, which is available after completing the first quest or by inputting the name Zelda when you register your name. The second quest changes the locations of the items and dungeons in the overworld and features completely different underworld dungeons with more complex layouts compared to the first quest, along with more difficult enemy placement. Plus, you can walk through the walls in the dungeons. If you really want a challenge, then the second quest is right up your alley. Oh, and bring plenty of money with you when you enter the dungeons. You'll see. The Legend of Zelda is a timeless classic with very deep gameplay for its time and has one of the most recognizable soundtracks in video games. It's also one of the most challenging games of its time due to its cryptic nature, and I'm sure it still poses a challenge to this day for some players. The exploration, trial and error, and experimentation to figure out what to do makes you want to keep on playing. Eventually, I was able to commit the entire first quest to memory to the point where I can go years without playing it and not skip a beat. I have yet to completely memorize the second quest, though I have beaten it several times. The gameplay was so popular, many other games were released over the years that were influenced by this style of play, and that leads us to our next game, and that is Nutopia. Nutopia was developed by Hudson Soft and released for the PC Engine in 1989 and for the TurboGrafx-16 in 1990. The game is set in the world of Nutopia, which is a land of peace and prosperity that is ruled by Princess Aurora. One night, the evil demon Dearth breaks into the sacred shrine and kidnaps the princess and steals the 8 medallions, which contains the spirit and wisdom of Nutopia's past leaders, and hides them in crypts scattered across the land. The next day, the hero Zelda is summoned, and it's up to him to recover the 8 medallions and rescue Princess Aurora. Sound familiar? You start the game inside the sacred shrine where the old mother instructs Zelda to seek out the 8 medallions and rescue the princess. To help him along the way, she gives him a compass which helps him track the direction of each crypt. The sacred shrine serves as the game's central hub, which I'll explain in further detail in a bit. Right away, you'll notice that Nutopia shares many gameplay features with The Legend of Zelda. You'll explore through the overworld, otherwise known as spheres in this game, one screen at a time. There are underworld dungeons referred to as crypts which have to be conquered. You have to make use of a variety of items in your inventory to defeat enemies and to navigate your way around. You'll come across villagers who will give or sell you items and provide advice. It even has that loud, annoying beep when you're running low on health. Let's take a look at these features in further detail. The world of Nutopia is very large and diverse and consists of 4 spheres. There's the land sphere, the subterranean sphere, the sea sphere, and finally the sky sphere. Each sphere consists of 64 screens in an 8x8 grid. Combined, the overall size of Nutopia's spheres is double that of The Legend of Zelda's overworld, 256 screens to Zelda's 128. Unlike The Legend of Zelda, where you can freely roam around the overworld at any time, in Nutopia you have to start off in the land sphere before you can move on to the other 3 spheres, though you can go back and revisit any sphere that you previously visited. It's a bit more linear in nature. I'll explain this in more detail later. The inventory system in Nutopia is nearly identical to The Legend of Zelda. You have one button to attack with your sword, though in this game you don't shoot beams from your sword when your health is full, and another button to use items that are highlighted in your inventory. Many of the items in Nutopia are similar to the ones in Zelda. You can use boom bombs to blow up holes in the walls to uncover secret passages and crypts or entrances to villagers' homes. There's the rainbow drop, which allows you to move over narrow streams just like the ladder, and moonbeam moss, which is used to light up dark areas just like the candle. Nutopia has items not found in The Legend of Zelda. There's a magic ring that can transform strong enemies into weak ones. If you're running low on health in a crypt, you can use warp wings to escape. You have falcon shoes that allow you to move quicker. One of the most useful items in the game is the fire wand. It's used to attack enemies and to burn trees and other structures to uncover stairways. What's interesting about the fire wand is that it has 3 levels of strength based on how much health Zelda has remaining. Each sphere consists of its own set of enemies, many of which function similarly to those from The Legend of Zelda. The enemies are diverse in that they have unique movement patterns and speeds, and some of them will hurl projectiles, in some cases at a much higher rate than the ones from Zelda. One issue I had with Nutopia is the hit detection with the enemies. You have to be careful where you position yourself when you attack an enemy, especially the ones that can jump or fly. They can sometimes reach through barriers and attack you even if it doesn't seem possible. This can be annoying at times, but you can always use the fire wand to make things easier. The other issue I had was being restricted to moving and attacking with your sword in 4 directions, though you can attack with the fire wand in 8 directions. You'll come across villagers that live underground or in walls that you have to uncover by burning trees, blowing up walls, or pushing rocks. They can also be found in stairways that appear when you defeat all enemies on screen. Villagers provide advice to Zelda, although it's not as cryptic in nature like in The Legend of Zelda. They'll give or sell you items to use. They may also restore your health, provide you with money, increase your bomb carrying capacity or maximum health, and provide a save point and or password. Turbo chip games did not have battery backup, so you either had to use a password to continue your game at a later point, or have a TurboGrafx CD player or Turbo Booster Plus, which allowed for save data backup. The layout of each sphere gets more complex the further along you go, so it's important to keep track of where you've been because it can be easy to get lost, especially in the sea and sky spheres, and yes, it has happened to me before. To guide you, there's a compass which points to the direction of the next crypt. When you're one screen away from the crypt, an alarm will sound which tells you that you're close. Some crypts require you to perform certain tasks before you can enter them. In each sphere, you have 2 crypts that you must complete to obtain the medallions. Like the Legend of Zelda, each crypt has an assortment of rooms that you must navigate through while avoiding enemies and traps that are laid out, including blocks that will emit blades if you come close to them, and spear traps that are activated if you step on specific tiles. In each crypt, you'll find a crystal ball, which is a map of the dungeon, though not all rooms appear on the map, and a key which is required to enter the room of the crypt boss. In addition, there are treasure chests laid out in each dungeon where you'll find upgrades to your sword, shield, and armor, plus other items as well. At the end of each crypt, you'll fight a boss. The bosses have specific attack patterns that you have to follow carefully. Many of them can only be hit during certain openings, so you have to be quick about it. The latter bosses are very challenging, so make sure you have 2 potions on hand. Every time you defeat a boss, you will obtain a medallion and you'll be transported back to the sacred shrine where the Old Mother will restore your health and increase the number of your health units by 1. As you can see on the floor, there are slots for each medallion. Once you get 2 medallions in one sphere, a stairway will appear which will take you to the next sphere. This is why I refer to the sacred shrine as the central hub in this game, as you can use this location to go back and forth between spheres. That way, if you miss any critical items, you can always go back and get them. Once all 4 spheres are cleared, an entrance in the sacred shrine will open that will lead you to a hallway where you'll encounter the demon Dearth. Defeating him requires specific items in your inventory, otherwise you'll not be able to inflict damage on him. Nutopia is an enjoyable game which does a great take on the Legend of Zelda style of gameplay, which is worth revisiting once you complete it. It offers a much larger and more diverse landscape than Zelda, and it's very colorful and detailed, but then that should be expected. With a larger field to roam around in, it offers a fairly long quest in which you may not discover every secret the first time around. For my playthrough of Nutopia for this video, I found stuff that I didn't catch the first time I beat this game many years ago. Nutopia's quest has a more straightforward approach compared to The Legend of Zelda, though some locations can be tricky to navigate through. It has a pretty solid soundtrack with different tunes playing in each sphere, along with some eerie music in the crypts. Nutopia offers a diverse cast of enemies and bosses that will provide a challenge, and has a nice mix of items at your disposal. A sequel was released a couple of years later, which made several improvements to make it even more enjoyable. Nutopia makes a great addition to your TurboGrafx library if you don't own it, and it's also available for the Wii Virtual Console and the PlayStation Store. Nutopia is definitely a chip off the old Pixel, and to wrap things up, we'll show you The Legend of Zelda and Nutopia side by side. That'll do it for this edition of A Chip Off the Old Pixel. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.